What if everything you avoid or try to hide is actually the missing piece to understanding who you really are? The idea might feel uncomfortable, but according to Freud, what we repress doesn't disappear. Those emotions, desires, and memories we push into the darkest corners of our minds continue to shape our choices, influencing how we live, and even how we connect with others. The mind, much like an iceberg, hides most of itself beneath the surface, where these hidden forces take on a life of their own. In this video, inspired by Sigmund Freud's transformative ideas, we'll dive into psychoanalysis to explore how to identify what you repress and, more importantly, how uncovering these truths can open doors to personal growth. After all, by bringing the unconscious into the light, you not only gain a deeper understanding of yourself, but also the tools to live a fuller and more authentic life. Picture a beach ball being forced underwater in a pool. The harder you press it down, the greater the pressure builds, and just a small slip can send it shooting up with force, perhaps even hitting someone nearby. Freud likened repression to this. It's a defense mechanism of the mind that pushes unacceptable desires, impulses, or memories into the unconscious. They may be out of sight, but they're never out of influence. Repression can start subtly, like avoiding thoughts of a mistake you made, or it can run so deep that you don't even realize it exists. Yet, its effects are evident. A common example is someone who avoids conflict at all costs, only to explode in anger over seemingly trivial matters. Like getting cut off in traffic, the mind finds indirect ways to release what has been repressed, proving that ignoring something doesn't make it go away. It simply changes its form. Freud used the metaphor of an iceberg to explain this. Only a small part of the mind is visible above the surface, while the majority lies submerged in the unconscious. It's in this hidden part that repressed desires and buried memories silently shape our thoughts and behaviors. You might have wondered, why do certain emotions or reactions seem to come out of nowhere, like an unexpected wave? The answer often lies in what's been pushed into this hidden realm of the mind. But why is repression so significant? Because it's not just a protective mechanism. It's also a force that silently shapes our lives. Often, we repress what feels incompatible with the image we want to project, or the expectations of society. The problem is, the more we ignore these parts of ourselves, the more they find ways to surface, whether through our dreams, anxieties, or even physical symptoms we can't explain. Take, for example, someone who represses their fears. Imagine a person who avoids challenging situations out of fear of failure, without realizing it. They might start criticizing those who take risks, or come up with reasons to avoid trying something new themselves. In this case, repression doesn't eliminate the fear, but redirects it into other behaviors, keeping it active in the background. It not only protects us from immediate discomfort, but can also limit our choices and stifle our potential for growth. By understanding these hidden forces, we can begin to uncover the parts of ourselves we've locked away, paving the way for a more complete and empowered version of who we are. Recognizing repression, then, is the first step toward understanding the underlying reasons behind many of our behaviors and reactions. The more we understand about what we've hidden in the unconscious, the closer we get to discovering who we truly are. That beach ball may seem difficult to hold down, but once brought to the surface, it's no longer a threat. It becomes an opportunity for growth and learning. Have you ever felt like something was wrong but couldn't quite figure out what it was? Often, this feeling can stem from the emotions and desires we repress. Like a house with hidden plumbing, our repressions work behind the scenes, creating pressures that eventually show up in unexpected ways. These can manifest as anxiety, repetitive patterns, strange dreams, or even physical symptoms that seem to have no clear cause. Imagine someone who represses their ambition because they believe it's wrong to desire success or recognition. Instead of pursuing what they truly want, they might begin to criticize colleagues who are thriving, projecting their frustration onto others. This projection is an indirect way of dealing with repressed feelings, but it doesn't solve the problem. It only disguises it. Freud described this dynamic as inevitable. What is repressed doesn't disappear. It merely finds other ways to express itself. A phrase attributed to him captures this idea well. Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. This is the essence of how repression impacts daily life. These hidden forces don't lie dormant. They silently shape our decisions, relationships, and reactions. A common example is when someone overreacts to trivial situations. Picture someone who explodes with anger because another person took their parking spot. This disproportionate response might be the tip of the iceberg, a signal that something deeper is at play. Perhaps it's the result of years of unspoken frustration, of always putting others first, and never voicing their own needs. What seems like irrational behavior is actually a release valve for emotions that have been buried in the unconscious. Recognizing these patterns requires paying close attention to the details of everyday life. Often, they show up in subtle ways: constant irritability, difficulty relaxing, or even in how we choose our hobbies and relationships. Someone repressing sadness might, without realizing it, seek constant distractions, like overworking or endlessly consuming entertainment. These coping strategies might work for a while, but like any plumbing system under pressure, the cracks will eventually show. The good news is that these manifestations can serve as valuable clues. Observing disproportionate reactions, unexplained discomforts, or recurring dreams is like finding the thread of a tangled ball of yarn, waiting to be unraveled. Instead of fearing these signs, we can use them as a map to understand what's truly happening in the depths of our minds. After all, facing what's been repressed is the first step in turning internal conflicts into a path toward a more authentic and balanced life. The unconscious is like a locked room in our mind, filled with memories, impulses, and desires that we cannot access directly, but that continue to influence our choices and behavior. For Freud, the unconscious was the hidden engine driving much of our lives. It is where repressed elements find refuge, quietly shaping our decisions and internal conflicts. To better understand this, think of the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. The story revolves around Dr. Jekyll, a physician who creates a potion that separates his good side from his evil one, giving rise to Mr. Hyde, his dark and instinctive persona, while Jekyll tries to stay in control. Hyde emerges to act immorally and impulsively, bringing devastating consequences. This internal struggle between the two sides symbolizes the conflict Freud described between the id, the ego, and the superego. In Freud's model, the id represents our most primitive and instinctive desires, seeking immediate pleasure. The superego, on the other hand, is the voice of morality and social rules, often rigid and unforgiving. The ego is caught in the middle, trying to balance these opposing forces. Imagine someone who avoids leisure time because they feel guilty about relaxing. This person might be under the influence of a strict superego, believing their worth lies solely in being productive. Meanwhile, the id, craving pleasure, might express its dissatisfaction in other ways, perhaps through binge eating or pent-up irritability. This constant battle, though invisible, directly impacts how we live. The metaphor of the unconscious as a locked room helps illustrate this dynamic. What's stored there doesn't simply disappear. It's like a room full of boxes labeled with painful memories, repressed impulses, or desires we'd rather not acknowledge. Even though the door is shut, these boxes can influence the surrounding environment, shaping moods, reactions, and even dreams. Speaking of dreams, Freud regarded them as a royal road to the unconscious. Dreams reveal, in disguised form, repressed desires and internal conflicts. Take, for instance, a recurring dream in which you're late for something important. This could symbolically reflect the internal pressure you feel to meet expectations, either your own or those imposed by others. Dreams are like encrypted messages that the unconscious uses to communicate with us. But to what extent are our daily choices truly conscious? If we're honest, we'll notice that many of them are automatic responses to desires or fears we don't fully understand, from the foods we choose to eat to the people we prefer to avoid. The unconscious is always at work, subtly shaping our actions and thoughts. Recognizing the role of the unconscious is like finding a hidden manual to your own mind. By exploring this locked room, we begin to uncover behavioral patterns and understand the motivations behind our conflicts. After all, the more light we shed on what's hidden, the freer we become to act consciously and in alignment with who we truly are. Recognizing the role of the unconscious in our desires and conflicts is like opening a door that leads to new questions. What exactly is hidden there? And how can we identify these elements that shape our lives without our awareness? This is the next step on the path to self-discovery. After all, understanding that there's a locked room is just the beginning. Finding the keys to explore it is where the real work begins. Have you ever wondered why certain situations bother you more than they should, or why some behaviors in others trigger disproportionate irritation? These reactions aren't coincidences. They're like signals pointing to what has been repressed. Freud suggested that dreams, intense emotional reactions, and repetitive patterns are valuable clues to decoding the unconscious. The challenge lies in learning how to interpret them. Imagine someone who avoids any kind of confrontation, but loses their temper over something trivial. Like being cut off in traffic, this behavior could reveal a repressed discomfort with their inability to assert themselves in other areas of life. In this way, what's repressed finds indirect ways to surface, subtly but persistently demanding attention. Freud believed that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. They appear as coded messages, often difficult to understand at first glance. For example, dreaming about missing a flight might not just be a literal fear, but a symbolic representation of feeling unprepared or inadequate for something important. Keeping a dream journal is a simple practice that can reveal patterns and hidden meanings behind these dream images. Beyond dreams, intense emotional reactions also provide valuable clues. Have you noticed how certain situations or people seem to stir something deep within you? Even if the reason isn't clear, perhaps a seemingly mild criticism triggers an outburst of anger or sadness. In many cases, this can point to unresolved insecurities or past traumas. Repetitive patterns are another key indicator. How often have you found yourself in similar situations, as if stuck in a loop? For example, someone who repeatedly chooses emotionally unavailable partners might be avoiding confronting a repressed fear of rejection. These patterns aren't random. They reflect unresolved issues lingering within us. Beginning to identify these repressions requires a willingness to observe and reflect. Ask yourself, what situations make me uncomfortable? What do I avoid doing or feeling? Sometimes, what we criticize in others reflects something we repress in ourselves. Keeping a journal to record your emotions, reactions, and dreams is a practical exercise that can open doors to valuable insights. Identifying what we repress is like turning on the light in a dark room. At first, the light may reveal chaos, but over time, it brings clarity and organization. The more you explore your reactions and behaviors, the easier it becomes to connect the dots and bring to the surface what was once hidden. It's an ongoing process, but one that offers the reward of self-awareness and freedom. Identifying what we repress is an important step, but what comes next? Working through repressions requires courage and patience. As delving into these aspects of the mind is like cleaning out an attic full of forgotten boxes. Each memory, emotion, or desire brought to light carries a meaning that needs to be explored. While it might feel uncomfortable at first, this process offers an opportunity for transformation and growth. One of the most effective ways to address repressions is by seeking therapeutic support. Freud believed that free association, where a person speaks whatever comes to mind without filtering, could uncover repressed content and help understand its origins. However, you don't have to wait for therapy sessions to begin. Practices like journaling or reflective writing can also help you explore repressed emotions and thoughts, enabling you to connect the dots in a more conscious way. Imagine someone who represses their desire to speak publicly due to a fear of judgment. This person might start confronting that fear gradually, such as by speaking in small groups or practicing presentations alone. Each small step is a way to face what was repressed, making the process less intimidating, much like organizing an attic. It's easier to deal with one box at a time, rather than tackling everything at once. Another strategy is to observe repetitive patterns in your daily life. For instance, if you often feel irritated in specific situations, ask yourself, what might this be trying to tell me? An emotional journal can help identify triggers and feelings that are typically overlooked. Recognizing these reactions is the first step toward understanding and transforming them. Creativity is also a powerful tool in this process. Repressed emotions can often be channeled into constructive outlets, such as painting, writing, or music. Think of artists like Frida Kahlo, who turned their pain and internal conflicts into meaningful works of art. This kind of expression not only relieves built-up tension, but also reveals insights about who we are and what we feel. Lastly, cultivating self-compassion is crucial during this journey. Confronting repressions isn't easy and can bring up feelings of shame, fear, or sadness. Remember that these aspects don't define who you are. They're simply part of your story. By bringing these parts to light, you're not just freeing yourself from them. You're also integrating them into a more complete and authentic version of yourself. Working through repressions is like planting a garden. At first, there's a lot of work to remove weeds and prepare the soil. But over time, flowers and fruits begin to grow. The more you allow yourself to explore what was hidden, the easier it becomes to cultivate a life aligned with your true desires and values. Confronting our repressions might seem daunting, but it's through this process that we discover our potential for transformation. Freud believed that making the unconscious conscious was essential for growth. It's like taking a rough piece of coal and polishing it until it becomes a diamond. What once felt like a burden or limitation can become the foundation for a more authentic and fulfilling life. Think of figures like Martin Luther King Jr., who transformed his outrage against social injustices into movements for change. He could have repressed that anger and pursued a conventional life. But by confronting and channeling his emotions, he created an impact not only for himself, but for the world. This reminds us that the energy we spend repressing emotions can be redirected towards something constructive and meaningful. Repression isn't just a defense mechanism. It's also a message from the mind about what needs attention. Imagine someone who consistently avoids talking about their insecurities, believing that ignoring them will make them disappear. Instead, these insecurities resurface indirectly, perhaps as procrastination or excessive self-criticism. When this person decides to confront what they've repressed, they can start transforming their fear of failure into motivation to learn and grow. This process, however, requires time and patience. Just as you can't build a house without first preparing the foundation, you can't integrate repressed emotions without first understanding what they mean. Take, for example, someone who represses the desire to be more assertive. This person might begin by recognizing small moments when they avoid speaking up, then gradually practice expressing their opinions respectfully and confidently. Each step forward represents progress toward authenticity. Personal growth, in this sense, isn't about erasing parts of who we are, but about integrating them. Freud once said that freedom is the ability to choose how we respond to our inner impulses. When we free ourselves from the fear of facing what we've repressed, we gain the power to act consciously instead of being prisoners of unconscious patterns. It's in this space of choice that true growth emerges. By bringing repressions into consciousness, we begin to rewrite our story. It's not about erasing the past, but looking at it through a new lens. Understanding that every challenge faced and every emotion repressed holds something to teach us. This transformation allows us not only to better understand ourselves, but also to create a positive impact in our relationships and in the world around us. The more whole we become, the greater our capacity to live with purpose and intensity. Our relationships are often mirrors reflecting the most hidden parts of ourselves. The repressions we carry don't remain confined to our minds. They project onto the dynamics we create with others, shaping interactions, generating conflicts, or building emotional barriers. As Freud taught, what we avoid facing in ourselves can manifest as projections onto others, turning our relationships into fertile ground for self-discovery or frustration. Take, for example, someone who feels excessive jealousy in their relationship. While the insecurity may seem tied to their partner's behavior, it might actually reflect a fragile self-image or repressed fears of abandonment. In this case, jealousy is a symptom of something deeper, lurking beneath the surface, as Freud put it. Projection is when we see in others what we don't want to see in ourselves. This dynamic is common and can appear in any type of relationship, romantic, familial, or friendly. Understanding these dynamics can transform relationships into opportunities for growth, rather than sources of conflict. By addressing what's repressed within ourselves, we can break free from destructive cycles, deepen our connections, and nurture healthier, more authentic bonds. In doing so, we not only heal our own inner struggles, but also create more meaningful and harmonious relationships with those around us. Emotional triggers are another clue to how our repressions impact our relationships. Have you noticed how certain traits in those close to you can irritate you disproportionately? Perhaps you criticize a colleague for being too ambitious, when, in reality, you repress your own desire to strive for more. These reactions are like alarms signaling something that needs exploration. Ask yourself, what might this irritation reveal about me? Repressions can also create destructive patterns in our relationships. Imagine someone who constantly avoids difficult conversations out of a fear of confrontation. This pattern can lead to a buildup of frustrations, resulting in emotional outbursts or distancing from the people who matter most. On the other hand, someone who represses their needs might end up in unbalanced relationships. Where they give more than they receive, these behaviors don't come from nowhere. They're rooted in past experiences, beliefs, and fears that remain unaddressed. Recognizing how repressions affect our relationships is the first step toward transforming them. A useful exercise is reflecting on moments of conflict. What words or actions from the other person provoked your strongest emotions? Often, these reactions reveal more about ourselves than about the other person. Additionally, creating space for honest and empathetic dialogue can help diffuse these dynamics and strengthen connections. Working through repressions in relationships is like adjusting the mirrors on a car. Only when we see clearly what's around us can we navigate safely. By becoming more aware of the projections and patterns we bring into our interactions, we open the door to more genuine connections based on acceptance and mutual understanding. Our relationships are a reflection of who we are on the inside. Confronting the repressions that interfere with them isn't just a way to improve how we relate to others. It's also a way to understand and embrace the deepest parts of ourselves. In this balance, we find not only healthier relationships, but also a richer and more fulfilling emotional life. Within every repressed emotion lies energy, waiting to be transformed. Freud believed that internal conflicts could be sublimated, redirected into constructive and creative activities. Instead of wasting energy hiding or denying parts of ourselves, we can channel it into creating something meaningful and purposeful. A powerful example of this is the life of painter Frida Kahlo. Her art is a direct expression of the physical and emotional pain she endured throughout her life. Each brushstroke reflects not just her suffering, but also the depth of her human experience. Frida transformed her repressions into works that continue to resonate with people today. This is the power of channeling repressed emotions, to create something that touches both our inner selves and the world around us. This transformation can begin in simple ways. Think about an emotion you often avoid. Like anger or sadness, instead of repressing it, ask yourself, how can I express this in a healthy way? Writing in a journal, painting, composing music, or even engaging in an intense sport are ways to release this energy. These activities not only provide relief, but also help us better understand what we feel and why. By embracing and channeling our repressed emotions, we transform them from hidden burdens into sources of creativity, growth, and connection. This is not just a journey towards self-awareness, but also a path to living a more authentic, expressive, and purpose-driven life. Imagine someone who represses the desire to explore something new, like learning to dance or pursuing a creative hobby out of fear of looking ridiculous or inadequate. This repressed desire might turn into frustration or criticism of others who freely embrace their passions. But by confronting that repression and taking small steps, trying a class or practicing alone, that person can not only release the pent-up energy, but also discover a source of joy and self-confidence. Beyond artistic expression, repressions can also drive practical changes. For instance, if you suppress feelings of dissatisfaction with the monotony of daily life, this might be a sign to try something new, exploring different places, or making small adjustments to your routine. When we face these emotions, we find the motivation to build a life more aligned with who we truly are. Transforming repressions into creativity isn't just about expression, it's about healing. It's like taking rough coal and polishing it into a diamond. By accepting the repressed parts of ourselves, we allow them to teach us something, and in the process, we uncover a strength we may not have known we had. This is the beginning of a deeper connection with who we really are. In the end, repressions aren't our enemies. They are parts of us waiting to be heard and transformed. The more space we give them, the freer we become to create, live, and express ourselves fully. What could you create if you stopped hiding? What you feel, perhaps your greatest work, or your most authentic life, is waiting to be born. Have you noticed how some questions seem to resonate deeper than others? Sometimes, simply looking inward can reveal more than we expected to find. It's in this intimate space, where few dare to venture, that transformation becomes possible. It's not about being perfect or solving everything. It's about allowing yourself to slowly discover who you really are. Think about the parts of yourself you may have hidden or avoided. What would they say if you listened? Maybe there's a freer, more authentic version of you waiting to be discovered. A version unafraid to face inner challenges and aware that these repressed parts aren't weaknesses, but vital pieces of your story. The process doesn't need to be rushed, nor does it need to be linear. Each small insight, every moment you open yourself to what has been hidden, is like lighting a dark room. And with each step, you not only learn more about yourself, but also feel increasingly connected to everything around you. Your relationships, your goals, and even your dreams. Now, I have something special to share with you, who stayed until the end. The very fact that you're here shows you're willing to know yourself more deeply, to look inside yourself. That makes you special, because not everyone has that courage. So, I want to invite you to take part in this space. What resonated with you the most today? What awakened something inside you? Feel free to share in the comments. This space is made for you. As you reflect on this, imagine the impact you could create if you began acting from this newfound awareness. Small gestures, like paying closer attention to your emotions or allowing yourself to explore something that once seemed impossible, have the power to transform the way you live. It's in the space between what was repressed and what is being discovered that the potential for something truly unique resides. So, here's an invitation. Take a moment today to listen to yourself with honesty. Ask yourself, what have I been avoiding? What can I learn from it? Simply asking these questions is already an act of transformation. It's like opening a door you didn't know existed, with an entire world waiting on the other side. In the end, what you'll uncover won't just be answers, but also new questions. The kind that guide, challenge, and inspire. What was hidden is not your enemy. It's your opportunity to become more, and you deserve to discover what it means to live authentically, because there is something within you that is singular, unrepeatable, and essential.